with a whole lot of truth. The Remedy Revolution is here for you. Ooh. And now here's your host, Aaron Page.
All interviews presented on the Remedy Revolution podcast are designed to provide information and inspiration only. Guests of the podcast may present opinions and anecdotes which are solely their own. And as always, before beginning any treatment protocol, please consult with your preferred medical provider. Welcome to the Remedy Revolution podcast. My name is Erin, and today's guest is somebody who I was recently introduced to as somebody who has been very instrumental in creating informational documentaries in order for people to really understand the business behind cancer. She is somebody that I'm really excited to interview because I don't know a whole lot about her. So it's actually really fun for me when I don't know my guests because I get to really dive in and ask the questions with a beginner's mind, which is always really fun. For those of you listening today who are finding value, please like, share, download the podcast. It really is the best way to get the information out there. As many of you know, much of this information is largely censored. And so for you to share that with your friends and family in order to give them the information is really the best way to spread the word. Thank you so much. Now introducing Megan Smith. She is a documentary filmmaker. She just released her newest movie, A New Standard of Care, Alternative Cancer Therapies, which dares to discuss methods of healing cancer that Big Pharma and even governments don't want you to know about. Welcome, Megan. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Erin. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I always say that the vast majority of us do not come to this table, if you will, of alternative therapies, with an exuberance. We are usually dragged kicking and screaming. So I would like to know, how did you get into this world of creating cancer documentaries?
So as my background real quick, I have a master's in science and biology. And I lobbied Capitol Hill for 12 years, and I'm an investigative journalist. I did a story for the Washington Post on inaccuracy of Lyme disease testing. So in 2007, I contracted late Lyme disease, and Johns Hopkins told me I was incurable and said I'd be on high dose antibiotics IV the rest of my life. And that wasn't the answer I was looking for. So I left, and serendipitously, my friend had also come down with a squamous cell carcinoma for the second time on his leg. And he said, this time I don't want to get it treated for it. I want to do alternatives. And we both landed at the same time, really weird, on a Rife machine, RIFE.
Mm-hmm.
And so we bought a Rife machine together, and we both went on a year and a half adventure, and we cured ourselves of chronic Lyme, which is incurable by modern medicine, and squamous cell carcinoma using just this machine. So that told me, okay, there's some alternatives out there that they're not telling us that are working. And so about a year later, after I contracted Lyme, my husband contracted lung cancer. And he'd probably had it a while, because as soon as they biopsied it, it went stage 4. And I said, look, why don't you just try this machine? It cured my friend's carcinoma on his leg. And so he tried it for 3 days. And as long as that he had wheezing from his lung cancer and his lungs cleared up, and he said, man, I said, just let's try it. You've got radiation tomorrow. Let's forget the radiation, put them on hold. They'll be there when we get back. He just couldn't do it. He said, I don't understand this machine. It's all, I got to follow the white coat. I know that they know what they're doing. I have to trust my doctor. And he was stage 4, because we knew where that was headed. So after 2 rounds of a cocktail of 5 chemos, one was platinum, very toxic. He was gone. He had 2 weeks to live after the second round. So I stewed about that for about 6 years. And I saw Ty Bollinger's The Truth About Cancer series in the meantime. And I said, wow, this is fantastic. And, it would be great if all of this information, or the pearls, were in one area in a documentary film. I knew nothing about documentary filmmaking, but I grabbed a guy who said he wanted to learn how to be a cameraman. And 2 weeks later, we were on a plane to Europe, and still making, I was over there making the appointments out as I was over in Europe. It was kind of a frantic situation. But we got some great interviews, and then came back, traveled all over the US, traveled to Mexican clinics. And I had 200 hours of footage. Then the pandemic hit, And in the meantime, I put out another film on breast cancer screening called Boobs, The War on Women's Breasts. And that one got picked up by a distributor. So I got kind of a year and a half, I had to do that. Then I came back to this film. So this has been 8 years in the making. And I almost gave up after the pandemic. We were all so, looking at our lives. And I said, no, I have to do it. I have to do it. And so serendipitously, I found an editor. He's also a filmmaker, Eric Marola, who's done the Dr. Brzezinski films that some of you may know. And he just happened to have time on his hands to edit my film. So it took us a year because it was a lot of film to go through, but we got it out, and I decided it's never going to be in the theaters because they're, like you said, they're censoring us. So I put out 4 hours and 45 minutes worth of information all in one area, 2 nights of watching. It's free. It's right now, it's on YouTube for free at anewstandardofcare.com. And if they take it down, you can always find where the film is there. But I just, I hope that people watch this because almost 50% of us now are getting cancer in our lifetimes. And if you know this information beforehand, if I'd known about Ty's work before my husband got cancer, we wouldn't have been panicked. And that was kind of why I did these films.
So what did you unearth in all of your research that was particularly alarming?
So first, I did the film in 3 acts. Act 1 is what we're doing today, which I kind of knew, but I didn't know how horrific it was. I just knew about my husband's story, but I found out more little, nerdlies in there as I went through that. And then the second act is on alternative cancer therapies, talking to the doctors. You'll see what the therapies are, not all of them, but most of them. I call them cornerstones that a lot of the clinics are using. You'll see patient stories, stage 4 reversed. And then act 3 is why they're not using them, because that's the question I got all the time. But I did have some aha moments. One of them was that the reason conventional therapies don't work is that this is told to me by a medical oncologist. He said is because they're looking at the DNA, they're trying to destroy the genetic material in the nucleus, and they're just zapping the patootie out of it with radiation and chemo. Chemo is only 99% effective. 1% is those stem cells floating around your body that have escaped and are trying to find a new organ. And so it just doesn't work. Versus the holistic doctors are looking at the mitochondria, which is called the powerhouse of the cell. It's where our energy is created for all of our bodily functions. It's where metabolism cycles happen, like the aerobic versus anaerobic, which is no oxygen occur. And they said, every single one of them said it's a mitochondrial dysfunction. It's not a genetic nucleus dysfunction. So they're barking up the wrong tree, and they probably know it. I don't know, but the oncologists don't, but somebody in the medical world knows that because they're always looking at alternatives going, well, how did they get that to work? So, they know chemotherapy and vaccines are where medicine makes their money. So they're not going to stop using chemotherapy. They just won't. And immunotherapy sounds good, but it also doesn't work for a number of reasons.
Yeah, so we've talked a lot about Lyme here, and you mentioned something about the idea that IV antibiotics for life didn't sit very well with you, and nor did it with me either. I've been along on that journey as well. And, one of the things that I have noticed is that throughout the mainstream medical field, the vast majority of these protocols are designed to kill pathogens rather than to really kind of uproot and heal the body from the ground up. Like you said, healing the mitochondria, healing the functionality of the body so that disease or pathogen can no longer survive. So it's a complete 180 of that whole model of looking at, how do we heal? And from my experience, really kind of that outward in approach, or the kill, kill, kill model, as I call it, really is not very effective. Perhaps it might save you some time, if you're really far down the road in certain scenarios, but I find it really interesting what you said there, because I have seen that kind of across the board when it comes to mainstream medicine. One of the things I wanted to ask you about, because a lot of the funding, for example, when it comes to cancer, and there's a lot of it funding wise, but a lot of it goes towards things like awareness or these prevention campaigns where it's really screening processes. It's not medicines or practices to heal the patients that are currently sick. So, what is it that you found throughout all of this research as far as where some of this funding is going, and is it perhaps targeted towards the wrong pursuits?
Yeah, again, they want to keep chemotherapy going as long as possible. And immunotherapy, it might cure some blood cancers, but chemotherapy also is curing some blood cancers. So they're not able to get at the solid tumors. That's a chronic disease, and medicine doesn't heal chronic diseases. They put a Band-Aid over it. They give you, they'll give you a pill, and they're not, like you said, they're not actually, unless it's an antibiotic and they are killing the microorganism, they're not curing the disease. So we're stuck on medications the rest of our life. Okay, sorry. I got off on a tangent. What was the question?
So going back to some of the funding, where is some of that funding targeted,
Right.
when you donate, say at the grocery store? And do you suspect that it's targeted towards the wrong pursuits?
Yes, sorry. Yes. It is. It's like I said, they're looking at the wrong part of the cell. They're killing the wrong part, and they're obliterating all the other cells around it. They don't look at prevention. Women with the going to the breast cancer screening, a lot of women think mammograms are preventative medicine. They are not. By the time, ladies, you find a solid tumor in your breast on a mammogram, it's already encapsulated. It's been there anywhere from 2 to 10 years. It's not early detection. Okay. It's not early detection. The only early detection would be stage 1, and very, very, very few breast tumors are found at stage 1. I was told by a radiologist, and I've never heard of any, they have these precancers, but they're not cancers, and they're taking women's breasts off and saying, hooray, we cured the cancer. No, you cured a precancer and took a woman's breast off when she may not have needed it. So they're not looking at prevention. They're barking up the wrong tree for how to treat cancer. And it's just wrong, wrong, wrong. And their campaign, they are always messing around with the statistics to say, look, we're curing more people now. No, you're just screening them and pretending like you're curing them. You're moving the timeline downstream. It's cheating. And we have more cancer than ever before, and they're not curing it any better than they were, almost 50 years ago. So that's just wrong.
How pervasive do you think is misdiagnosis?
Unfortunately, what I found in the breast cancer screening film, I found that it happens frequently. And even American Cancer Society, who, God bless them, Otis Brawley, sat for a 45-minute interview with me. And he said, I always think it's better you should always get a second opinion when you get a cancer diagnosis, because pathology, which is when they take a biopsy and look at it under a slide, they're looking at the cancer cell type and trying to figure out if it's a cancer cell and what type. Pathology is not 100%. And I always thought it was, and it's not. I always thought mammograms were 100%, nowhere close. So pathology, if I got a cancer diagnosis, I would take the slides, take them to a different pathology center, totally different doctor, and have them look at it, because it's a matter of opinion. And I didn't know that. And I had a friend, I tell this terrible story in my film, that he was a cancer survivor. So he had that going in his history, but his HMO said, you've got stage 4 cancer now. It's in your bones. We need to treat you right away. Well, luckily he went for a second opinion, and they said, you have mononucleosis, and it looks like you have stage 4 because it's in your bone marrow, which is where mono affects your bone marrow. And when I talked to American Cancer, they said, we've heard that frequently. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. I mean, to put the patient through that, but also if they don't catch their mistake, you're headed down the road of chemotherapy. I mean, so anyway, get a second opinion for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, because I want to start kind of at the beginning of these stories. So what are some of the alternatives for detection then? Because obviously things like mammograms can be It can increase the amount of radiation that you're putting on the breast tissue. There's other alternatives that some may or may not have heard of. But what is the best way then, if you suspect that you're not feeling great and you suspect there might be some kind of disease process and want to check for cancer? What kinds of things might you look to?
Well, they do have blood tests now. You can actually send your blood away to Greece. Somewhere in Greece, they can look at all different types of markers. So that's one way you can do that. And you can find that online. But as far as breast cancer, thermography, what I talk about how terrible mammograms are. I didn't think it was as bad as it is, but it is pretty bad. Radiation, they're squishing your breast, they're missing cancers, they're over-radiating us because we have dense breast tissue, and they're trying to differentiate between a white tumor and the dense breast tissue. So they're cranking up the radiation and not telling you, which is not informed consent by any means.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead I said women should be doing, and this is posed to me by 2 doctors, they said we should be doing ultrasounds, which is also going to pick up a tumor, and thermography. Thermography is cool. I love it because it's a way to pick up inflammation in your body. It sees heat. And so if you see, like I didn't know this when I was making my film, I said, I'll put myself in the film and have a thermogram, but I don't want my face in the film. Well, it turned out I had a problem in one of my breasts and I didn't know it. I wasn't taking care of myself during filming. I was 20 pounds overweight and, just not paying attention. And I had a problem brewing in one of my breasts. And the doctor tells me this on film and I'm like, what? And so I changed my lifestyle. And a year later, my thermogram went back to 0. I got off medications. I went to a naturopath. I got on supplements. Started eating non-GMO foods, cleaned up my water, my air, lost 20 pounds and ate healthy, basically took out some of the stress in my life, and boom, breast went back to normal. So I was like, wow. So that I put that in my film. I put that story in. So, the thermogram can, and I'm not an expert in this area, but it can be used in other areas, other places in your body, but you'd have to go to somebody who knows what they're doing. Don't go to somebody with a $500 camera, please. Make sure their cameras, they put in about 25,000 on their equipment, or they're probably not going to give you a good, diagnosis or whatever. So the blood tests, I think between the blood tests and that, but we have to take care of ourselves. It kind of starts with, we have chronic diseases are all over the place because of all the pollution in our air, water, food. And we just went through all that stress of COVID. We have the vaccines that are inflaming our bodies. And we also have COVID itself is very inflammatory. And I got some skin lesions like popping up out of nowhere. I think one of them was a melanoma right after COVID. And I treated it with the Rife machine.
Mm-hmm.
If you get a bad bout of COVID, you have a lot of inflammation in your body. You need to get that out as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, take care of yourselves, folks.
Yeah. So, what are some of these treatments and techniques that you're seeing in the cancer community specifically that do seem to be helping and moving in the direction of healing?
So there's stuff you can do at home. Like I said, clean up your air, food, water. I'm just going to tell you things you can do at home because some of these things are expensive. Cancer loves sugar and hates oxygen. So get as much of the processed sugar out of your body. Don't eat canned foods. Look at all the ingredients on the back of those things. They're scary. If you do, you eat Amy's, which is I'm not making any money off of Amy's, but she's got, she tries to watch after us. In the clinics, I call them cornerstones because I saw people using the same things pretty much across the board, like high dose vitamin C IV, and that's releasing more oxygen. I mean, a lot of these therapies are doing, they're going after the metabolism of the cancer cell, which is largely anaerobic. It doesn't like oxygen, like I said. So they're releasing oxygen into your body to fight the cancer. They had hyperbaric chambers, which is all oxygen. They teach you how to detox your body. Sometimes coffee enemas are used. I have never done one, but people swear by them.
I have.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't done one. How
yeah. Not very comfortable, but actually very healing. Lots of things I actually have a good friend who is a cancer survivor who does regular coffee enemas. So she's kind of inspired me to try them again. So we'll
Yeah,
see. But anyway, very
that's
helpful
good.
in healing for sure.
Yeah, detoxing your body. Homeopathy is sometimes used over in India. They're reversing brain cancers just with homeopathy.
Yep.
But our government decided they were going to study it. And in my film, I talk about this. They were going to study it. And then National Cancer Institute, when I interviewed them, said, well, it just didn't work out. And then they just dropped it. And I was like, you got a brain cancer cure and you're dropping it? I mean, that's the kind of stuff they're doing.
Oh, I know. I'm a homeopath. So
Oh, there you go. Okay. You know more than I do. Vitamin B17, also known as Laetrile, and amygdalin, illegal in the US, largely now illegal in the EU. They're clamping down even tighter. They
Mhm.
still use it in Mexico quite a bit. And I think in some areas of the US they're allowed to, but you have to be a certain doctor, blah, blah, blah. They talk about your dentistry, very important. I had no idea. Who knows? I mean, fantastic. They talk about getting out. You have to go to a biodentistry dentist to get the all the mercury taken out of your mouth. I had mine taken out a long time ago. My dad told me to. I was like, okay, so so I'm glad I did that when I was young. But they also talk about certain teeth, like Dr. Rao over at Paracelsus Clinic in Switzerland. I interviewed him. He said 95% of his breast cancer patients had a bad tooth on that side. They're called the breast teeth. They're here, up here in the upper along your premolars or whatever, and it went right down to the breast. And as soon as they fixed the dentistry problems, the breast cancer melted away. So that was very powerful to me. So I walked through some of the dentistry, what they're doing in that area, and then just cleaning up your psyche. Why did you get cancer? Unless you had like a huge load of radiation or something, most likely you had some kind of stress going on in your life 2 to 10 years before, where all of a sudden your body gets all, or you change your diet or something, but all of a sudden your body got all out of whack and you're on, producing cortisol, which affects all your, all of your different hormones in your body, which controls all your organs. And then everything falls apart. Your immune system goes to pot, and then you get a chronic disease like cancer. So they walk the patient through that and say, and try and do some psychology on them and try and figure out what was going on, which I think is fascinating. There's some great stories in my film about that. So those are kind of the basic ones that I wrote down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so what, in your opinion, was the most miraculous turnaround that you were able to witness?
There was a woman with stage 4 pancreatic, and it was in her liver. It was all over the place. And she just refused. She was great. She's in my film. She refused to do chemo, especially chemotherapy and radiation. And the doctor, it was from one of the famous centers, cancer centers. And they're like, you're nuts. You're going to die. And she's like, well, I don't care. I'm going to Mexico. So she went to Mexico. She cleaned up her life, her house and everything, got rid of all the toxic stuff, went to Hope for Cancer. And in 3 weeks, they started to see progress of her tumors disappearing. And they also used a thing called sonodynamic therapy. I think I've got the name of that right. And it's like a Rife machine on steroids, which I think is really fascinating. So they used that largely on her on the liver lesions. And so then she went back home and she continued. They gave her some stuff that she was able to use at home. And then I think she took a second trip down there and her cancer kept disappearing. And the place she went back to her doctor, oncologist, and they went, I don't know what you did. They thought their machine was broken at first. But then he said, I want to know everything you did in Mexico. And of course, they never did anything with the information. They're probably trying to figure out how they can patent something in there in the protocol. But
Right.
that medicine's not interested in it unless they can make a lot of money off of it. That's why vitamin C isn't given to patients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a topic we've discussed quite a bit on the podcast here, but when we have a system that is really financially driven, unfortunately, people tend to go after the most profitable treatments and protocols. And Even in some scenarios, I do think that things are widely publicized as being helpful, primarily from a financial aspect. So, if they're profitable, then they're widely publicized, for example, and then the doctors, read the abstracts, which we've talked a lot about here, and they think that they're doing good. Where do you think the corruption stems from?
It's all through the system. It starts in academia. I put this in both of my films. Two of the top 5 journalists, 2 of the editors of the top 5 medical journals in the world, 2 of them have come out. One said 50% of the medical literature is fraudulent. That was the Lancet. And then the woman at the New England Journal of Medicine, after she left, she wrote a book. And she said, because of that, because it's so widespread, you can't trust your own doctor's judgment, because they're relying on the evidence medicine, which the cornerstone of which is the literature and the research. And so, unfortunately, pharma puts pressure on the academic people, the researchers, like, if this doesn't turn out the way I want it, you're not going to see any more research dollars. So then they're messing around with statistics the next thing you know, and sometimes it's just flat out lying, which is just terrible. But statistics they use all the time, they say it's not significant, statistically insignificant. And that's just, you can draw the box here or you can draw the box here, and it totally depends on that. And they use that to mess, and the doctors go, well, see, it's significant. It's like, no, it's not, So academia, they have a revolving door. Pharma hires people that used to be in the government, and they give them a nice salary, and then they go back to work for the government, and they call it revolving door. We got that going on. Congress, there's so much payola going on up there through campaign contributions and dark money. There's 4 lobbyists to 1 member of Congress, 4 pharma lobbyists. That's a lot of lobbying power. So how are we as patients supposed to fight that? It's the doctors the conventional doctors have to start raising their voices. Quite frankly, they know the system is broken, and they just won't talk about it. They just kind of put their blinders on. They want to make their house payments and, tuition payments. And it's really a shame more people aren't speaking out about this travesty. And we're, patients need to too, but that it's harder for us because we're, trying to organize this, we're like trying to herd cats, but yeah, so it's pervasive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so many doctors nowadays are no longer employed by themselves. They are employed by the hospitals and these big conglomerates that, so they have to, at the end of the day, report to a boss. And I think the difficulty with that, and particularly in the medical field, is that there's no innovation. There's no incentive to try new and innovative treatments or therapies. And in fact, there could be severe detriment to many of those doctors because they have to respond to somebody else who may not agree with their choices, or who is perhaps beholden to people like shareholders or pharmaceutical giants who are funding research projects and things like that. So,
and that goes back to the standard of care, hence the name of my film.
Right.
Standard of care. If they don't follow the standard of care, they're putting themselves open to liable. And also, like you said, I point this out in my film too. I'm glad you talked about it. The umbrella groups, all the little mom and pop, doctors that we grew up with are now under an umbrella. I think I think part of it's because their malpractice insurance has gotten so expensive, and they've just made it more viable financially for these doctors to get eaten up by these big conglomerates. And then they have the marching orders of their umbrella groups, like Mayo Clinic. I mean, my doctor got swallowed up by them, and she's not the same doctor. Mm-hmm. Every time I go in there, she's talking about 5 vaccines for my 90-year-old parents, every 2 weeks. I'm like, that's crazy. What do you, that's going to kill them. I don't understand what, like you said, it's not an art form anymore. It used to be an art form, practicing medicine. It's just not, it's just following orders now.
Yeah, well, there's no more liability to the patient. It's liability to, whomever is writing the paycheck at the end of the day, unfortunately. It's a huge problem. I think it's a problem that many people do recognize. Whether or not they speak up about it is to be seen. However, I do think most people do understand, at least in some aspects of the medical industry, is that there's definitely some problems. There's some holes in the dam, if you will. And most people do recognize that, at least in some capacity. I just don't think most people really truly understand how deep that rabbit hole really does go, particularly when it comes to the financial aspect, driving all of these therapies and treatments, rather than, the true Hippocratic oath, do no harm, and to really care for your patients as a doctor. So I do think doctors get into, particularly treatment of things like cancer, which is a complex and difficult situation, disease, lots of variables here, many different people from all walks of life who are affected by various cancers. And, I do think many of the doctors who get into this do really want to get into it to help. Is there a certain point that you found in your research that these doctors kind of become co-opted? In other words, like, what is it that you think kind of drives that switch to flip, from wanting to really help in the cancer world, and then getting to a point where it's no longer necessarily about the patient anymore?
Well, I think they do start out with good in their hearts. I mean, some people do it for money. They think, oh, I'm going to be a
Sure.
doctor, prestige money, but I think the majority do it because they want to help people. In med school, they're being indoctrinated. They're being brainwashed. I mean, my friend's daughter who came out of med school just said something to me one day. She said, we were told by our professor that if it's not in the top 5 medical journals, it doesn't exist. It's all baloney. I'm like, wow, there's a statement. So, and then they come out of med school and then they're like, this isn't exactly what I pictured, but I have to do the standard of care. And I think slowly they start to have aha moments. They talk to their cohorts. They're having the same, is this really what we should be doing? And then, like I said, they've got their bills to pay and they just go, I'm just going to have to put my, like an ostrich, put my head in the sand and keep doing the standard of care and just, I don't know. I don't know how oncologists live with themselves. I know they think they're extending life, but the life that most patients have with cancer is just, they have to go through those god awful treatments. And I just don't, I know I was going to go to med school and I know I would have been one of the people that peeled off and went into alternative medicine. And when you do that, every single doctor that I know that's now non-conventional has been harassed by the medical boards. They've been brought forward for sometimes it's really stupid reasons. And they'll find something and they'll bring them before the medical board and they'll have to spend all this money, and none of them had their license taken away, which speaks volumes. It was about harassment, intimidation. And, if you don't have a backbone, which it would be terrible to go through that, they quit their job. This isn't worth it. I'm going to retire. But some of them are emboldened saying, I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to do what the little stupid thing. I'm going to keep helping my patients, and, good for them. I'm like, I applaud them. They are some of the bravest people. They put all this money and time into getting their medical degrees only to have it taken away when they try and do something artful and save the patient. It's terrible. And some people have FDA raids. I talk about that in my film. That's even more terrible, because then they come in with their guns and it's weird. It's like, where is this really the US of A here? It doesn't make any sense what we're doing.
Yeah. So currently, what types of cancer seem to be on the rise most, and why do you suspect those might be on the rise?
Those are good questions. No, really, they are, Erin. Okay, so I wouldn't have said this before, but now since the pandemic, what I'm noticing and what I've talked to doctors about, because I always like to go in, because I'm a journalist, I like to get in there and investigate. I talked to a dermatologist because I had those cancers, those skin cancers just pop up out of nowhere, and I was like, are you guys seeing more skin cancers since the pandemic? And first she goes, no, and then she goes, well, yeah, there's been a really big uptick in melanoma. I'm like, well, that's a big cancer. That's like the worst cancer you can get on your skin. And pancreatic, a lot of I have like 6 or 7 friends or some people in my orbit that have stage 4 cancers. I mean, big cancers that's going to take them down. Brain cancers. I'm seeing like 3-4 people with brain cancers. Brain cancers. I never in my life knew somebody with brain cancer before, and now they're all over. Pancreatic cancers. I mean, the worst cancers are popping up out of nowhere, and melanomas, things like that. So, yeah, that's been my experience. I don't know. It's so depressing. I don't feel like doing a dive into that, but I'm sure there's postulations, but I think it has a lot to do with, again, the stress we're under, the COVID vaccines inflame your body, and so does COVID. And we've all had it now. And if you get a bad case of it, it's really, I've had a couple of bad cases, and it's not fun. It's a nasty little bug that they invented, and they did invent it. I don't care what they say.
Absolutely. I've had it 4 times. So yeah, no fun any of those times at all. So let's kind of discuss because I know that just from all of the preliminary things, even years ago, when they were talking about healing cancer at some of these centers, like in Mexico or, any number of foreign countries, because of course we can't do those things in the United States. But people that were going to these, a lot of them had to do with a very clean and very specific diet. What have you seen to really benefit some of the patients with cancer in their healing when it comes to diet?
So diet, non-GMO, genetically modified organisms, which basically your body's not going to recognize it as the same source, a natural versus a natural source, right? Same reason you get side effects from medications. Your body goes, what the heck is this? It's close to what I need, but it isn't. They give you a lot of dark leafy greens. They're going to cut out the processed sugars. I mean, what I was saying before, cut out the processed sugars. Very, very, very important. It does feed cancer at a higher rate of speed. I don't care what your oncologist tells you, folks. It's been in the literature for years. Otto Warburg in the 1930s got a Nobel Prize for it. So cut out the sugar that starves the cancer. So that's what they're going to do, is they're going to try and get your glycemic index of your blood down. So you're starving the cancer. Just eating healthy. It basically goes back to eating healthy. And they teach you, I mean, the Gerson diet is a prime example of that. And you have to want to live. If you have cancer, it's a chronic disease. You have to stay on top of it the rest of your life. I mean, I'm sorry to say that, but it really is true. And you have to meditate and do all the things, just oxygenate your blood, go for a walk. But meditating is really important. Yoga, anything like that. Just to get breathing, because you have to get the stress out of your life. And we're all under stress now. I mean, I know I'll leave you guys with hope at some point in this conversation, but there's stuff you can do at home. You can clean up your life now and stop eating McDonald's. I was eating McDonald's twice a week, going back and forth, filming and stuff. And that was not helping my body at all. Probably when my breast was screaming at me.
So personally, what was the most impactful takeaway that you learned from making these films?
Cancer is not a death sentence. You can have hope with cancer. I mean, people get that diagnosis, and like my husband, they freeze up a lot of times. Some people are able to go, I just have to do my research. And I don't think that happens very often. I've only seen it with 2 of my friends. There is hope out there, folks, and it can start in your home. You can empower yourself. Empower yourself now. Know what you have to do, because we're being assaulted by all these things in our environment. And just clean up your house, clean up your diet, get healthy. Just get healthy now, and watch my film. It's 2 nights of your life. You'll learn so much. And then watch Ty Bollinger's series, and then read. And I have a whole bookcase of books, how to stay healthy, and just get empowered, and know there's people out there, medical doctors, who have a lot more knowledge than I do, that can help you turn your life around so you don't get these chronic diseases that we're getting.
Absolutely. All right, Megan. So in every interview, I ask each of our guests 8 rapid fire questions. Those questions are designed to give us a little bit more insight into who you are, what makes you tick, and they're just a little bit of fun for our listeners. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Number 1, if you could only choose one natural remedy for the rest of your life, what would it be?
I don't know if the Rife machine would count for that, but high dose vitamin C, if I had access to a IV, I'd probably be pumping that in a lot.
Tell us something most people don't know about you.
I was a folk singer for 10 years with my sister. Right out of college. I was stalling to go to med school, and 1 year turned into 10. And then I went back to the other side of my brain and got my master's and worked at a laboratory.
Nice. Very cool. Did you have a band name?
The Smith sisters. We were on Flying Fish, which got gobbled up by Rounder Records. And I think we're still on YouTube.
Very cool. I'll have to check that out. So this goes very well with our next question. If I were to compile a playlist of happy music, what song would you suggest be added?
A lot of happy songs out there. You know, during the pandemic, the first song I picked up my guitar, I'm a bass player, but I picked up my guitar for the first time in, I don't know, 15 years, because half my week was with my parents and my 90-year-old parent, 95-year-old. And I went out on the deck and just started screaming at nature, you know, just playing my guitar. And the first song I learned was On Top of the World. It's a really happy song. It was the Carpenters way back when, and it just lifted my spirits. And I sung that every day during the pandemic.
Nice. Megan, what is your favorite guilty pleasure?
Probably McDonald's. Every now and then I'll get a Happy Meal. Yep, I will. I won't drink the whole Coke. I'll have just a little bit. Happy Meals.
What is the most influential book you've ever read?
Boy, that's a tough one. You know what? I'm going to say my biochemistry book. I took biochemistry twice, undergrad and then grad school. And wow, fascinating stuff. And that's where I learned all the metabolic cycles, and you had to memorize them. Boy, that was not fun, but really fascinating stuff. I just loved it.
Nice.
Makes me a nerd.
That's okay. You're in good company.
The Bible, put the Bible in there too.
Yeah. What does the word revolution mean to you?
Revolution. Well, by itself, it doesn't bring up happy feelings, but I would say we do need to have a revolution of sorts against what they're doing to us in medicine, without guns, preferably. We need to raise our voices, and it's a big undertaking, and I'm too old and too tired to do that. But boy, I wish somebody would take that on, and just because I'd get behind them, but I don't want to lead something like that. But we really do need to get the doctors, get everybody, the patients, all to just go to Congress and just stop it with the money. So I don't know.
And what does the word remedy mean to you?
Well, in this context, you know, fix it, remedy the situation, remedy our medicine, remedy our world. I mean, yeah, fixing things. I don't know if those are, I wonder what your other people on your interviews have, you know, answered.
A wide variety. And if you could impart one piece of wisdom onto our listeners, what would that be?
I think I'd go back to, you don't have to be afraid of cancer. You can have hope with cancer. It's not the end of your life. You don't let it be the end. You don't have to let it be the end of your life. You don't have to freeze like Bambi in the headlights. You can empower yourself. You can learn about it. There are things that are affordable you can do just even at home. People have reversed their cancers. Chris Wark, you know, Chris beat cancer. He did it by just basically chaining himself to a juicer. You know, so that wasn't very expensive. So there's ways you can reverse your cancer. Do not give up. There's hope out there. Read, you know, watch my film, Ty's series and books, and don't give up. There's a way to beat it.
Absolutely. Well, Megan, it has been a pleasure. Please reiterate, where can people find your films?
So my film on breast cancer can be found at boobs, BOOBSDOC for documentary.com, boobsdoc.com. I also have a blog. It's called blogonboobs.com. And that has a lot of information. I'm now starting to talk about alternatives and put up podcasts on it and stuff like that, like this one. And then my main film, my big film, is a new standard of care.com. a newstandardofcare.com, and that'll take you to wherever my platform is. Right now it's free on YouTube, but I at some point my CPA is saying I have to charge for the film.
Well, we should all deserve to be rewarded for very hard work, and you have done just that. You worked very hard to put together some very quality information that is no longer available from a simple Google search, unfortunately. And so it very much does take these grassroots efforts to put that information together and present it in a meaningful manner. Thank you so much, Megan Smith. It has been such a pleasure. And thank you all for listening. Again, please like, subscribe, share Megan's information, share her documentary. All of these things help push this wonderful, burgeoning narrative that is different than what has been going on in the past. Let's help to bring about that remedy revolution that we really need in this world. Thank you so much. Take care, y'all.
With hope as a guiding light, through darkest days we'll fight the night. With a whole lot of passion, with a whole lot of truth, Remedy Revolution is here for you.